Start us off, Carter.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Drafting well can be hard and can cost coaches their jobs. Wouldn't you like to trade the pick? Just go and trade the pick. That way there are no stakes at four. Bum, 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 bum. No one will be mad if you draft a lineman at like pick 20. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm pretty sure Cheers took place in Boston, but if it didn't, I look dumb.
It did.
Oh, thank God.
I love Cheers.
Whew. Really? I've never watched it. Weirdly, my only reference for it is when I was dating my big ex. There was like the in like the main part of Boston, the actual Cheers bars there, and it is a weird motif in Adventure Time, the later seasons of Adventure Time.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is Ice King watched it and like
I loved it.
puts on puppet shows that are Cheers.
That's awesome. I love it.
Right. And then they bring it back for Fiona and Cake, which is like set like way, it's like, oh, after all the events of Adventure Time, here's what Ice King is up to and how Fiona and Cake tie into that. And the way they use Cheers as a motif is actually really clever. But I won't spoil it because I think you should. I think you'd dig it if you watched it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just love Cheers. I got drunk at that one of their bars at like 10 in the morning in Boston once.
Real. Under what context, Kevin?
So we traveled to Boston.
Okay.
To go to the aquarium, and
fair enough.
We were like gonna do like lunch first, and they have their own version of Reading Terminal Market, Quincy Market, and they have like a little mini Cheers bar there. And I'm a big fan of Cheers. I'm not gonna go to a Cheers, like walk by a Cheers bar and not have a beer. I'm not going to not have a seat. And specifically Norm's seat, and
yeah,
like I'm not gonna order a water. I don't drink water. I'm gonna drink a beer. So I had I think 2 beers, and then we go to this Indian food stand, and I asked for my typical dish, lamb vindaloo, and
nice.
When asked. The big warning sign should have happened when he's like, I asked for a space, and he said, "Are you sure about that?" And I told him, "I know what I'm about." That should have been clear. Someone needed to be checked.
And yeah, that's a dangerous thing to say to an Indian chef. I weirdly have a similar, not me story, but a family member story.
Yep, did that. So I'm crying because of the spice, but it was so good that I refused to stop eating. And then it just kind of hit me. I was drunk because at that point I think the last thing I ate was like over 24 hours before that. So I had nothing in my system, and I proceeded to drink 2 beers back to back first thing in the morning. Yeah, that's
you know what? That story lived up to the hype. That was really funny.
I'll happily recreate it for you if you want.
Jesus. I believe back in the day there was a story in my family. It was like a cousin. Quote, he literally took the waiter over and said, "I challenge the chef to make this dish as spicy as they possibly can." And the aftermath, fucking guess what the aftermath to that was. Yes. But it's a very prolonged bit in my family where it's like, I challenge the chef.
Yeah, I got this Ted Lasso aspect about it with you ever watch Ted Lasso? I can't remember.
I've seen a couple episodes.
It's one of the first episodes. He's out with Trent Crimm from The Independent, and he was invited to his initial the guy that picked him up from the airport. He was like, yeah, while you guys are here, you should stop at my father-in-law's restaurant. And Ted Lasso actually goes because he's that good of a guy. And
just a nice guy.
And he just goes, "What do you recommend for the..." Like, Ted just hits him with, like, just treat us like one of the family. Serve us with that, whatever you want. Like, not even looking at the menu. And get some, like, the spiciest stuff. And Trent Crimm can't handle it. And Ted Lasso is, like, starting to eat it. Like, his mouth's on fire. and they come out with the second edition. It's just like, we know how you Americans like to eat a lot. And Ted Lasso's just like, all right, and hunkers down and still eats it and puts himself through it. Fucking love Ted Lasso.
I'll get around to watching it eventually.
So
oh, right, we're already... Welcome back to Don't Sleep on Football. Carter here.
We should be calling this Don't Sleep on Ted Lasso.
Yeah. Just explain the plot. Oh, God, we'd be like one of those AI videos where they just get into really granular detail about the plot.
Yeah. Anyway.
Like...
football.
But... Yes, football. Last we left, we got through the top 3 picks, which I feel like at this point feel kind of settled. Like there's been talk that the Browns and the Giants might at least be willing to trade. Mm-hmm. The only scenario I really see that happening is if the Giants are really so gung-ho about Shedeur Sanders but feel like they can get him later, them trading to pick to someone who desperately wants either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But I'm also very curious what the perception around Abdul Carter is now, because everyone agrees if he plays... he's going to be a Brian Burns level impact. But also, he has, like, they described it as not a stress fracture, but a stress problem in his foot. And I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm burned out from Joel Embiid, but I don't fuck with feet.
I think he's going to drop way more than projected. I think that's what's going to happen.
See, it wouldn't. I could believe that. I would be like, well, obviously not. He has stress fracture in his foot right before the draft. But I also could see a team like I don't know. Like I just think about how many NBA teams are just okay with that, and they're like, all right, so we'll lose for one more year. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm very curious to see. But now we're up to the New England Patriots, 4-13. Again, all they had to do was lose the final game against the division-winning Buffalo Bills to get the pick. Josh Allen takes a single snap for the Bills and then runs off the field to keep his streak alive.
Yep.
Mitchell Trubisky, their backup quarterback, was just a pinch too competent, so they pull him too for Mike White. And meanwhile, Joe Milton, the Alabama... It's so funny, Alabama after having like Tua, who was like small and like more intangibles than physical strength, and Mac Jones, who was like facilitator, not a great arm, not athletic, but like he throws it around. They go with like find the 2 fastest, beefiest boys you possibly can, and even though they can't hit the broadside of a barn, we'll make it work.
It was
sure enough,
a very interesting pivot.
Right, I respect it. If all else fails, that's why I'm kind of into Jalen Milroe in this draft, because I'm like, at the end of the day, if I'm going to draft a quarterback, it just at any round, independent of the first round, but especially in the first round. And they're inviting him to the draft, so there's a non-0% chance they think he'll go either day 1 or day 2. Like, I'm investing in a guy who has at least one A-plus physical trait. I'm like, I want you to have one thing that if all hell breaks loose, you can rely on. And I watched that guy, and he had more 20-plus yard runs than Lamar Jackson in his Heisman year. I'm like, I'm willing to bet on that. He's one of those guys where I'm like, do not let a competent team get him. Because I swear to God, if the Rams get him in the second round and they like let him sit behind Matthew Stafford, he's going to be a freaking all-pro, and we're all going to look like idiots. If the Eagles get him, I just the devious packages they could make with him. But anyway, the actual pick is the Patriots are kind of screwed in this position because they really needed Abdul Carter, they really needed Travis Hunter. And the 2 positions they need, offensive line and wide receiver, are kind of like just okay in this draft. I said for needs, offensive line or playmaker, and I believe you said wide receiver, running back. We kind of ended up in the same spot each.
Yeah, obviously they don't need a quarterback. Drake May...
The hard part's done.
Yeah. For what they had, Drake May had to work with last year, can only go up. In my opinion.
Objectively. No, it can always get worse.
It could get worse. But I think we're hitting the same vein of I said receivers or running backs, you said O-line and / playmakers. And they kind of already have picked up both. They now have Stephon Diggs as one of their wide receivers. They also picked up Matt Collins. The
lovable 2 former Bills, Matt Collins, who inexplicably turned into prime Randy Moss during the playoffs or whenever we needed
Yeah.
him to, despite being a special teams guy for most of the year.
Yeah, very interesting guy. And then you have, but they also have enhanced their. I scroll down too far. Their linemen too. Got a new center brought in. Got a new right tackle. Their center, Bradbury from the whoever Minnesota is, Vikings. Right tackles from the Jets.
Right. They basically rebuilt their entire offensive line except left tackle, which unfortunately is kind of the important one.
Yeah. So, I feel like, and they've put a lot of work into their defense this offseason too, so far.
Right. A defense that was actually kind of decent when everyone was healthy last year.
And so they literally only enhanced it.
Right. They brought in Milton Williams. They're going to get Christian Gonzalez back. And, Jabril Peppers will ideally be healthy again. Yeah, for the most part, the defense didn't need that much, but they brought in stuff. The Patriots are an interesting case study of, they had the most cap space going into free agency. And while they didn't get any, blow your pants off players,
They got a
Milton
lot.
Williams is...
They got a lot. Milton Williams did really good with the Eagles last year. And
Yes. He was good, but again, he's not like an all-pro level, this is a must-get guy, but it's you have to spend the money, and the fact that you've screwed up so many drafts underlines you need players. Mm-hmm. That's why you have the money.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is interesting. For them, the conversation I do think is going to come down to, do we get the first offensive lineman off the board or the first wide receiver off the board? This offensive line draft is interesting because there's a lot of guys projected in the first and second round, but there are a lot of guys who are yeah, they could be good, but maybe they should play guard. Will Campbell, the sort of lead prospect from LSU, very prestigious, won a lot of awards, was all SEC a lot, but his arms are short. Mm-hmm. That's all I've heard about him. He's got your arms are an inch and a half shorter than standard for an offensive tackle, and people are freaking out about that. And I guess the question is, are you willing to roll the dice on that, or are you willing to roll the dice on that and then move him to guard once you get a better option at tackle? Or do you go with a wide receiver class that is, again, okay, but not necessarily as the guy you're going to get now isn't as good as the guy you would have gotten last year if you drafted wide receiver.
Yeah, but they needed Drake May, so
last year they made the right choice.
Yeah, no, I think their biggest question at hand is going to be, what do the Giants pick up?
Right.
Because, at least if I was them right now, I would be 24 hours out, just going over last second prep and stuff, based off of what we think they need and stuff and what they don't need. It would be top running back, top wide receiver, top left side of the O-line.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Giants need very similar things. So whatever the Giants don't take, you take your favorite of whatever's remaining. If they pick up a running back, boom, wide receiver or O-line. They go for the O-line. Right. You're taking that running back or receiver.
Right. Yeah, and again, it's the classic discourse when you have a good rookie quarterback. And exactly, they made the right pick with Drake May, because it's there's some drafts like this one where if you need a quarterback but you also need another thing, you should probably just get the other thing and trust there'll be another good quarterback class coming up. Mm-hmm. That class with Daniels, May, and Caleb, it's no, get that now. No, this is the draft. This is a draft. Worry about every other position later. And yeah, they're in that position where it's okay, they got the guy. He looked great considering everything going wrong against him, but he also got beat up. And you're basically in the Cincinnati Bengals space of do we get him elite weapons and hope that makes up for the so-and-so offensive line play? Or do we just see if they can be a point guard and get the ball to mediocre pass catchers? Because their wide receiving core was horrific last year. And not for lack of investment. Again, the two guys they drafted last year, Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, were two highly touted prospects. Nothing. So, literally, if you look at the analytics of rookie wide receiver seasons, they were rock bottom.
Yeah.
And you hope... And I feel like even though he's coming off an ACL tear, the hope with Diggs is he'll just be an adult in the room that you didn't have last year. And I guess you kind of have to hope that he can like squeeze something out of them if you go offensive line.
I think,
Independent of what he does, just having like a grown up who's been in good wide receiver rooms before can give you a sense of perspective on how to improve.
yeah, I think talking with Diggs is going to be very important. Not because of like his behavior, but to be like, he's been in, like you said, successful wide receiver room. So it's like, what can you help us lead this this room into being better? And then if he's, depending on how dramatic his improvement is, they might not even need to draft an early wide receiver. They might. The reason I say RB is because I'm not 100% stalled on Stevenson.
I like him, but he's not. He's a complimentary running back.
Yeah.
He's a guy who, like, with a good system in place, can produce, but he's not a guy who can produce on his own.
Yeah,
Which is like why you talk yourself into elevating the position.
Yeah, he is like I would call it like an RB 1.5, where
Yes.
some games he starts, some games he doesn't. If he's not starting, he's like the initial drive. He at least like he'll be brought in if their other running back gets tired and stuff. They're like him and the other running back are actively keeping each other fresh.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess it comes down to like how they want to evaluate the position because it's like, well, if Genty's there and you really want like and you're like, we don't feel great about this wide receiving group and we don't feel great about the offensive line group to draft it this early, why don't we just get the great running back and go from there? Or if you just want another 1.5 guy or like a complimentary guy, there are actually a lot of decent like weirdly the best positional group in this entire draft is running back.
Yeah.
Travion Henderson, whoever gets him is going to be spoiled. This very much is like a Bashan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs draft of like, Travion Henderson is speed personified. Like, I'm so jealous of whoever gets him. And you also have Amar Hampton, really, really strong, like sort of stout running back for North Carolina. Like, there are options later if you want to either trade back into the first or if you want to try and get a high pick in the second round, where I think, like, and it's really interesting talking about it in relation to Genty, because while Genty is objectively a blue chip top end talent for the position, it's like, okay, but you can still get 75%. It's really going to test how much Saquon changed things in terms of like, is an elite back more valuable to you, or are you still going to go with the analytics stuff? And it's interesting to see where the Patriots go from there. And I'm not even 100% sure they should go offensive line, only because, like, I think this year made me appreciate more and more that, like, sacks are in part an offensive coordinator and a quarterback stat. I just think about, like, yes, the Chicago Bears offensive line was bad this year, but Caleb trying to do all of his rope-a-dope running around stuff sure as hell didn't help.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, the offensive line for Houston was really bad and really set their offense back. But it's like they tried to build an offensive system that their offensive line couldn't handle, couldn't endure, and it caused everything to stall out. So I'm like, I don't know. Do you just try to make it work with this offensive line and slightly flashier playmaking? Maybe that's the direction to go. But we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and they also put so much more work into their defense. I feel like they'll figure something out, but it just depends on who could be that one guy that really just turns things into like a better thing. And like I referred to Stevenson as a 1.5, and you talked about how good of a class it is. If they trade back for somebody that really wants him, or who wants one of the big ones, they'll still probably have options if they're looking for another 1.5. And maybe they go for like the opposite build of Stevenson, like where you go for like you got like your Derrick Henrys, your big bulky guys, but then you have your like Saquons where you're just stupidly quick and a little bit leaner.
Right.
The escape from the tackle versus the break the tackle kind of crowd.
Right. Shall we move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars? Pick number 5.
Is it weird that I thought this was a difficult team to figure out what they need?
It's weird how sad a season they had. Just a miserable, it really was like a death march of a season. Doug Peterson felt like a dead man walking the entire season, and
I'm surprised he lasted as long as he did, honestly.
It was a classic. They probably should have fired him after a certain week, but then decided it didn't fucking matter, so they just kept him to save time. They're the really weird situation where Liam Cohen, the new coach, offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. Yeah, who's a child. He looks so young. It's so weird, the idea that now there's also coaches who are younger than us. But, he turned the job down because he didn't want to deal with the weird general manager situation in Jacksonville, where the same guy has basically been looming over this franchise for, 3 coaching regimes. They finally fire him, bring him in. But the problem is, you need to fire your GM during the season because you need to give the new guy time to figure things out. Free agency starts really fast after the Super Bowl, and you need all of that stuff done. You need your scouts figuring out whose contracts are expiring, how much are they projected to make, what are we going to need, who are we going to have to pay, and do we have the money to pay this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. And also you need to make a big board with at least 30 plus players that you might be interested in for each round. And I'm are they just going to use all the stuff they already had lying around, or how are they going to do this? Because I have a good feeling I know who they're going to pick if they're just using the old boards, which is why I said least needed is skill position player, or as I would have said, please for the love of God, don't take someone who deserves to be on a better team. I just keep thinking about, everyone was kind of shocked they picked Brian Thomas Jr. They needed a wide receiver, but it felt like a reach. And then they take him, and it's this man is too good to be stuck on this jank-ass franchise. What are you doing?
It's the same situation Malik Neighbors was in last year.
Right, where I'm God, could you just fall 2 more picks? Can you just get to a good team? Remember that year where it was the Lions, despite being in the NFC Championship game, were picking 5th? Or the Eagles picked 9th that one year despite making the Super Bowl? And I'm just it should be a requirement that every year there is one team like that who can effectively rescue a great player. Don't worry, we're gonna get someone's in the bad side of town looking at the smashed window stores for the Browns and the Patriots, and the Eagles helicopter in. Don't worry, buddy, we're gonna get you out of here. We're gonna get you to the high rises. Don't panic.
That's how they got Jalen Carter, let's be real.
Exactly. Well, there was other reasons, which, it is funny that so much of the discourse about this draft is, a lot of great guys in the trenches, people are going to be able to mimic the Eagles, and I'm yes, have multiple succession plans at every offensive line and defensive line position, and also Jalen Carter happened to go to Georgia where they don't police anyone well, so he ended up being reckless, and also get the 2 best coordinators. Easy, it's easy to do all this. But yes, that's how they got Jalen Carter, where it's don't worry, buddy, we're gonna get you out of here. Imagine him just wasting away on the Bears or something.
Yeah, that would be so sad. I'd feel so bad.
Exactly.
But yeah, Jacksonville definitely is that kind of pit. I think I'm gonna pivot from what I said defensive leaders, which they honestly still desperately need. I mean, Trayvon Walker is probably the biggest name.
Right. Well, and Josh Hines Allen, but he's getting a little longer in the tooth.
But he's.
Yeah, it's so weird that a team with actual good pass rush is this nothing defensively.
Yeah. But if they don't pick up a defense, I would say probably dive into the tight end pool.
This is a interesting year for tight ends.
Although Brenton Strange is a hell of a name for their allegedly starting tight end.
It fits the vibe of Jacksonville. God, do we know? But I'm but here's the thing. I don't want the 2 tight ends, Colston Loveland of Michigan, who's who's like very lanky. He's very similar. Someone compared him to Evan Ingram, which is fitting because he was on Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Lanky, fluid, fast, great pass catcher. And Tyler Warren, who is like, he's the guy where I'm like, do not let him go to like, please don't let him go to like the Eagles or Chiefs. Don't let him go to a good offensive team because the devious shit they'll devise with him. He's a guy who passes the ball. He's a guy who catches the ball. He's basically like, what if Taysom Hill didn't have delusions of playing quarterback, and was also 6'6". I could see them doing that because that's the shit they do, where they get like the flashy piece instead of like doing, they refuse to eat their veggies. I'm like, I swear to God, if they get Ashton Genty, I'm gonna go fucking nuclear. Because in reality, you're right. They need defensive leaders. The spine of the defense is weak. They don't have any cornerbacks. They're linebackers. Like, despite good pass rush from the edges, their interior defensive line is weak. Like, if the Bills are running, like, the teams that physically were able to run over them was staggering. Teams that should not be running over you. Like, teams that aren't built around running the ball. Mm-hmm. But, like, who are we kidding? They're going to draft an offensive skill position player and, like, continue this game of, like, no, we have the generational talent at quarterback. We gotta make it work. He's gotta throw 40 touchdowns this season to justify drafting him.
Yeah.
I almost said Oakland. The Las Vegas Raiders. Another one that's kind of weird. It was kind of a weird, sad season, but whereas like Jacksonville still feels like a downer, Vegas feels like an upper. They basically overhauled their entire leadership group. Tom Brady is taking over more of a role as the owner. Don't know why he's still allowed to commentate games, but we'll worry about that when it's time to worry about that.
I feel like being a commentary and an owner isn't that upsetting compared to being like a coach and a commentator or coach and owner. Mm-hmm. I feel like that combination I'll at least allow. But yeah.
Right.
No, their offense or their teams seems to be improved. First off, new head coach. Specifically.
Right.
Pete Carroll.
Yes. The exact kind of right coach for the team, I'd argue. A guy who is a guy with a proven track record who can take advantage of the fact that this team has a lot of decent players. Like, again, we've talked about them. They're a weird team because it's like you can see the various different builds and rebuilds of this franchise over the last 2 decades. And it's like, yeah, well, we still have a lot of talented players from all these decisions. The problem is it's not like coherent and there's no vision. Or it's like Pete Carroll's a guy who brings in a very specific vision of like a tough, a tough, gritty football team who holds on to the ball and is capable of like big splash plays.
I think this will be very clearly a Pete Carroll draft.
Oh, yes. And there's like 1 or 2 guys I had in mind for that, or like positions that I had in mind for that. You bring in Chip Kelly coming off like arguably his most successful run as a coach in God knows how long, running the Ohio State offense. And you bring in Geno Smith, who, like, in spite of having a really raw deal last year in Seattle, really played well. I think he's grossly underrated as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And, like, also, I think you did the right
Oh, sorry. I just completely interrupted your thought for mine, but continue.
Well, I was just going to say, like, this is a team that simultaneously needs stuff, but is in a position to win now. And I think they just threw caution to the wind and said, screw it, we're going to try to win now.
Mm-hmm. Also, they brought in Raheem Mostert. I felt like their running back room was severely lacking last year.
Mm-hmm.
And Mostert kind of puts them back on like a reasonable level. He's a top 32.
Right. He's fascinating because it's like when he actually plays, you're like, God, is this like the best running back in the league? The problem is he's just very prone to injury.
Yeah.
Like that 1 year with he's had 1 or 2 years with the 49ers and Dolphins where everything came together and you're like, this man is just faster than everyone. This man is like, why is he not just one of the best running backs in the league? And then he gets hurt and you're like, right, damn.
That's
why. He's a fixation in fantasy spaces because it's like when he's good, he's so good. But I am looking at it and I'm like, okay, Geno Smith with Raheem Mostert, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers. Like you have 2 solid receiving options. You got a pretty decent running back. And the offensive line needs work, but it's not
It's not
You
crap.
know, it's not Patriots bad. It's not garbage. It's just
Yeah.
not great.
You're
You know,
you're running everything from behind center Jackson Powers Johnson, who I like. I like him a lot.
yes. And then you have a solid defensive line that'll carry the rest of an okay defense. And
Yeah.
I'm
Max
like, were you
Crosby's
early
still
on
good.
your? Yeah, were you just a year early on your Raiders win the division pick?
So here's a little fun fact for you. I saw it on Reddit. Since 2020, every time, every team's whose home stadium is the WrestleMania seat. What's it called?
I'm curious to see where this
The
goes.
WrestleMania stadium makes it to the playoffs. They don't always do good, but they always make it to the playoffs. So last year, WrestleMania 40 was hosted in Philly. Philly obviously went all the way. 39 was held at SoFi. Rams made it decently far. And I don't think I can list WrestleManias backwards like that based off of location. But this most recent one was hosted in Vegas. So, in a theoretical sense of this trend, they could make the playoffs. Granted, I also said they could make the playoffs last year, and look how that turned out with their pick number 6.
You're cursed with the gift of early prophecy.
Yes.
Um,
I'm the don't sleep
But-
on guy. I'm not the knows everything guy.
Fair enough. But yeah, for position of need, I actually put offense, offense, offense. If you're really comfortable with the offensive line stuff, that's fine. But also, like, again, I just want Genty to go to a team where I think he could succeed. And I actually think this would be a good fit. Because, again, Pete Carroll's whole thing, like, there's stories about how he nagged the Seahawks GM for, like, a month and a half to trade for Marshawn Lynch because he's like, this is the piece I need. He's the exact kind of running back I need. He doesn't fumble. He's always like 4 yards in a cloud of dirt, capable of explosive plays. Like, this is exactly what we need to put this team together. And sure enough, they won a Super Bowl. Should have won 2, but we don't need to relitigate that. And I'm like, either him or get one of these running backs in the early second round. I think that's a great fit. Even if you want to go wide receiver, if you want to literally just recreate the late Geno years with like as many elite wide receiver, like as many top tier wide receivers as you can, go ahead. Like, I actually think Ted McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, who's considered well, there's a lot of debate about who's the best wide receiver in this class, but like he tends to be the first one to go. 6'5", silky smooth runner, really great in traffic. Like, I think he could be a good fit with Brock Bowers.
Yeah. I think because so like you have Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, who are both great catching options. I think another receiver to give you like 3, and then maybe a running back 1.5 from their second round pick could really put them into a good start, and then just offensive line help. But yeah, no, because I also agree. I said they need O-line, but I'll take receiver as well. But I think my biggest thing is they don't need to waste early picks.
Right. Which I kind of said in my own way, but go ahead.
Yeah, so like you have Tennessee, like we talked about how like Tennessee can trade things away. Cleveland and the Giants are actually considering trades and stuff. But like I think Vegas is at that spot, like with that, especially with 6, where if they traded away, that would be more of a loss to them because they don't need like this episode's draft picks. You're like 5, 6, 7, like pretty much 5 through 10 is, in my opinion, the least tradable picks. Because you don't need that desperate 1, 2, 3, 4 pick of like, goddamn, I need a new quarterback. Goddamn, we need the best receiver or running back or whatever we're looking for. But you still have a lot of oomph where it's like,
you need a guy. Yeah, you need a guy who can help you win now, and you're like in the last window where you're going to be able to get a guy who could conceivably do that. Yeah. So you can't really screw around. Like, the Raiders don't need 10 low, they they don't need like 3 third-round picks who are going to be reliable starters. They need 1 or 2 blue chip guys who are going to help get this team that's kind of built for the moment to get over the top.
Yeah.
And my way of saying that was like, there's a lot of temptation to give them a quarterback, be like, oh, we'll also have a bridge quarterback, especially because Shador was like mentored by Tom Brady for a long time. I think that would be a bad idea. Unless you could somehow finagle getting back into the first round later to do that, if you really feel the need to have like a bridge system prepared, I think that would be a very foolhardy thing to do for a team that I do think can compete for the playoffs right now.
If they didn't have Geno, I would be saying they needed Shador. But they don't have. But they have Geno. They have Geno and they have
Right.
Pete Carroll, which has proven success.
Right. Like, I don't. Yeah, this is not a team that needs a young, old option. Because, like, you know, Geno is not Joe Flacco. Geno is not Kirk Cousins. He is still, like, when he has a decent offensive line around him, he's still a guy who can be a top 12 quarterback. Like, I don't think you need to screw around with that.
Yep.
Next up, the New York Jets. I can't believe people thought the
Oh my god.
Aaron Rodgers. I'm like, when he tore his Achilles tendon in his first game, I'm like, yeah, I can't imagine a version of this where it would work. It's like those, like, I'm trying to think of a dumb metaphor for it, but it's like snake oil salesmen who are like selling literal like snake poison and drinking and they die. And it's like,
Everybody loved name dropping that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the guy to change the Jets, and
he did. He got everyone fired.
Yeah, he changed it, but they always implied
Maybe
it was
that's
for the better.
best.
And now who knows?
Maybe it is for the better. Who knows? Like, maybe they did just need a new. Because again, it's like Saleh was a good coach, but he like looked over. He went through like multiple different quarterback regimes. The GM went through a couple quarterbacks. Like, at some point, if it's just not working, maybe you do just need a change of pace, even if they like objectively do better than you think they should.
Yeah.
Yes, they brought in Justin Fields to replace, which
I
really
really
is a
liked
night and
it.
day because yes, Justin, I want him to work. I just want him to work because by all accounts, he's a great guy. He's another guy with an A+ physical trait that I think you could build around. And like, in terms of like, I think he's a masterclass in like the nature versus nurture thing because it's like, who are like the sort of like developmental quarterbacks who got drafted and didn't quite pan out? Like Malik Willis, Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson. And it's like, you know who's the best of that bunch right now? Malik Willis. You know why? Because he went to the Packers, who have a real-ass coach who coached him to be better. Like, I just want him to find one coach who actually figures out how to develop him. But if nothing else, he's a likable guy who his teammates seem to like, and I genuinely think that's going to help, like, fix the core problem of, like, baggage and angst.
Yeah. I think he's that transition of I need to get away from my toxic ex. I'm just going to rely on this friend.
Mm-hmm.
Where it might
Right.
not be the perfect relationship, but it's at least going to be like, all right, we can work things out. I think we're going to see a lot more effort from Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson. I think
Right.
things are going to be generally happier. Yeah, you just gotta. You just got rid of the toxic.
Right.
So
Like, Brees was rough last year, but it's also like at some point you just kind of have to
you got to know.
throw away last season.
Yeah. Like, they need offensive help, whether it be on the line, whether it be on the line. Because I don't hate their. Like, Garrett Wilson, Josh Reynolds, and Alan Lazard are their are their 1, 2, and 3 as allegedly. And it's not terrible. Brees Hall is running back 1. Braylon Allen, running back 2. Not terrible. This could be another tight end team, but I don't. I think they're more struggling for your O-line than they are for that. And their defense has been good like pretty decent for a while. Maybe with a new coaching change, they can really get to that next level. But I said the one thing they don't need is to lose. Like, I think, I think they could put an asterisk next to the Aaron Rodgers seasons, and
Right.
everyone in the locker room will just kind of nod along to that. Be like, yeah, it is an asterisk season. But then,
But those contracts still have 2 less years on them.
yeah, one less. I wouldn't classify Aaron Rodgers' first year with the Jets as a year with the Jets.
Fair enough.
But it's still like you're losing time. You just can't lose people, and their young, hot defense is going to start talking contracts in the very near future for them. Sauce Gardner was drafted in 2022. That's going to be coming up soon. Sherwood 2021. Jermaine Johnson 2022. Like, negotiations are going to be happening in the very short future. So,
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a good way of putting it. Like, I put offensive playmaking. I think they're in a position to basically have their pick of the litter in terms of like running backs, tight ends, wide receivers. But more than anything, they really do just need like to give enough hope this season that everyone doesn't bail. Because they haven't paid everyone yet. They haven't paid a lot of their defensive players. Like this hot collection of young talent that they've largely kept intact. They still got to pay all of them, and it's going to be expensive. And like normal, like you're going to have to try and get at least a few of them on discount. You can't pay everyone at market value. And the only way you're going to convince anyone to do that is if it's like, okay, we finally have a vision and we are going to compete. So, like, in terms of your draft picks, I don't want it. It's less of a get-rich-quick scheme and more of like a show-proven investments kind of draft.
yeah. And it's just, I think it's also just a matter of, like, kind of like the get-rich-quick scheme, but it's like the reverse of, like, this is the vote of confidence year, like, I would say for a lot of these defenders, where, say, like, everyone's contract was up after last season. I don't think any of their defense would have came back, or, like, the vast majority of it, unless it was for insane amounts of money. I think this is the vote of confidence year, where they need to prove they can at least hang, and that would get people back or to stay.
Right. It is curious because again, it's one where we have a completely new regime in charge. The former defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions is their coach now, so I'm very curious to see like how much is it mimicking, like, because if they want to mimic the Lions, the answer is offensive line. If they want to do their own thing, then who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, they're a team that's in a really weird place. Like you said, picks like 5 through 10 are like weirdly critical for each franchise, despite the draft. Like,
These are the golden
without
picks.
obvious choices for all of them.
Yeah.
Again, it's not like last year where picks like literally like picks 1 through 7. It's like, oh, it's so obvious who they should go with.
Yeah,
this it's like
pretty clear cut.
I don't know, man.
But,
Speaking of which, shall we move on to the next one?
yeah, the Carolina Panthers.
A pleasant. It's so funny. Jets 5-12, extremely derogatory. Carolina Panthers 5-12, kind of complimentary.
Yeah. They
season that started out as bad as worse as it could, kind of turned out to be okay.
They weren't they beat their 2-15 record from last year. They have a draft pick in the first round that is actually intended for them.
Yes.
Because if you remember last year, they had their first pick, and you can look at the sheet too. It was the 33rd pick, was their first pick, and that still wasn't even the latest first pick for a team because the Cleveland Browns had their first pick was the 54th.
God, they really did trade the entire farm for Deshaun Watson, man.
Yeah.
At least, like, yeah. But at the end of the day, the Bryce Young trade will be less about what Chicago does with all those resources. It will be less about how Caleb turns out. And it'll be like, can Bryce Young be better than Deshaun Watson? And I'm like, well, that's a comfortably safe bar to make.
Yeah. There's the bar. That's the standard. They've made some moves off of this offseason, so I said that they just not to be bottom tier. Pick up some enhancement talent, either side of the ball, really.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they got
Right.
a little bit of depth at the positions, but not a decent amount. They just need to. It's like a not blow it situation, and they're still in one of the worst divisions of football with the NFC South. So yeah.
Right. It is interesting with a lot of these teams, a lot of these like lower rung teams. It is like it almost doesn't matter what position you can pick. You just have to get the pick right. So many things of like what goes wrong with the team. Like for example, we'll talk about in a minute. The Cincinnati Bengals. It's like what went wrong with the Cincinnati Bengals defense, and it's like, well, they thought they could replace the talent they had with draft picks, and they missed on all the draft picks. So it's like, yeah, extreme talent drain. And at some point, it's like, okay, maybe a first round guard isn't as valuable as a first round wide receiver, but if you hit on them and you just need talent, that's surmountable. Like that helps. That helps fix things. For me, like I think the biggest assignment for this year is you ate your veggies last year. You got as much as you could for Brian Branch. You know, you spent a lot of money to fix the interior offensive line. Like you actually had a decent offensive line
Yeah.
last year. You know, Chuba Hubbard sort of like resurrected his career. Like you did like the homeworky parts. You ate your vegetables. Now the question is, do as much as you can to decide on Bryce Young. Bryce Young was able to turn it around last year and actually play pretty well down the stretch where I'm like, okay, he isn't a complete lost cause. We aren't done already. There's at least like you can watch him and say at least there's some upside here. At least like you see why someone would have drafted him early in the first round. And my thing is
he was proven to not be a bust, like a draft bust.
right. At worst now you're looking at like a Ryan Tannehill like oh, he'll be a journeyman in the NFL for however long he plays situation. But whether or not he's your starting quarterback, like the quarterback who can get you over the hump is about that's what this draft is about. And like for example, like a part of Bryce Young's sort of selling point is like, okay, he doesn't have the best physical traits, but he's like a facilitator. He's like a point guard. He just gets the ball where it needs to get and his receivers get it. In that case, I'm like, then we really need to bump up this wide receiver core a little bit. Now, Adam Thielens, he's been shockingly good the last few years. He's a reliable blanket. You can get him, he can get 5 targets, he can get 11 targets, and he'll produce reliably.
Yes.
But he's 34 already. Xavier Legette, he had his moments last year, but I'm not convinced I don't think he's like a pure X receiver. He seems more of like a gadget guy. He gets like 4 targets a game, like makes a couple splash plays. You experiment with how to get him the ball more. And again, because it's another team that I think could be in position to like call their shot on wide receiver, I think that actually would like really benefit them. If they want to go tight end, they could go with Warren. If they want to go wide receiver, if Tut's still there, heck, it would be a little early for it, but I do think they could justify going with one of the other wide receivers. Like theoretically, Matthew Golden would still be available. It'd probably be a little early to go Emeka Mbuka, the Ohio State wide receiver, but he's kind of like the exact kind of guy they need. He is like probably the safest pick in the draft in terms of like he is a Tyler Lockett. He is a Robert Woods. He is a guy who every year is going to get like 70 catches for about 950 yards and like 8 touchdowns. And if you took someone, and it really is a testament to like it reflects on like how people approach team building, where if you take a GM aside and say like, hey, for your first round pick, you can have the career of Robert Woods or Tyler Lockett. A lot of GMs would take that because it's like, well, that's a known commodity. That's a certainty. We're not going to look like idiots if this person doesn't show up because they're going to show up. I definitely think it might be worth taking a wide receiver here to sort of just see how far you can take this Bryce Young experiment. Heck, Matthew Golden actually would be fun as like a deep field stretcher. I'd be curious to see, like, it really comes down to what kind of wide receiver they think their room needs.
Yeah. I went with I said the opposite of that. I said I don't really hate their wide receiver room.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Like we talked Thielen's good graces. Leggett has a lot to show. He's
He has
still
upside.
he has a lot of upside. Still very young. I mean, he was a rookie last year, so he's of course very young.
He's only 16.
Yeah.
That's a lie. I just lied to the audience.
What else is new? Yeah, no,
I know.
I don't. If they don't, I think it's more on the lines of if they don't draft a wide receiver round one, I'm not gonna be like, you fucking idiots. What are you doing? It's gonna be like all right, as long as it makes sense, which they have enough holes that pretty much any position can make sense for them.
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of that like mentality, and like they could trade 8 to go up a little bit, depending on who they want. Because I think somebody's going to try and trade into the top 10. I don't know. I'm assuming it's going to be Pittsburgh.
Right. I just like the Aaron Rodgers thing with Pittsburgh, and we'll talk about it when we get there. It's just so tedious. I'm like, I think they get cold feet. Like, they panic and just say, screw it. The Panthers weirdly are a team that I think would benefit from a trade down in terms of like, they are a team who I could see talking themselves into getting like the 3rd best wide receiver and the like 5th best offensive lineman and the 6th best cornerback.
Yeah.
And that actually being better investment on their value. Because again, like in the process of getting Bryce Young, in the process of this like rebuild, they did lose a lot. They did lose a lot of depth, and like it wouldn't kill them to like just go all in on depth and be like,
they go down.
I don't know. I guess it's
a handful of picks, but they get an additional like 2nd or 3rd to just grab somebody else that they want. I feel like they can do a lot to improve, but not a lot to be great, if that makes sense. And yeah, they just need to not be. I think they just need to not be that bottom of the barrel team, because they got the selling point between like Leggett, Thielen, and Bryce Young. I feel like they have that selling point of like us, and they do have Rico Dowell too now in the running back room. So they got things happening. Alrighty. A very curious team, the New Orleans Saints.
The New Orleans Saints, who's
9th
5-12, yes. Who were briefly the darling of the league when they scored 40 points on the Carolina Panthers, and then one offensive lineman got hurt, and the entire thing collapsed in on itself.
Let's not forget they also scored like 40 points on the Cowboys.
True.
Bullied the crap out of them. Why did I censor myself?
Yes, why not? Their biggest problem is that they've kind of needed to just basically throw anything that isn't nailed down off the boat to try and stay afloat. At some point, their cap situation gets too convoluted to explain, but short version is... Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, it's their cap, it's its own entity.
Yes. The shortest version, I think, to describe it is they had a really good draft in 2017 and got really close to the Super Bowl like 3 times, and convinced that they were just one lucky break away, kept pushing the money they owed people. Like, it was literally like a credit card, and then they would get a new credit card and put all the debt from the one credit card on the new credit card. And they kind of just kept kicking down because like you can do a lot of fancy finagling of like, oh, we'll add a year to your contract, and like we'll turn this money into a signing bonus, and we'll turn this money into incentives and guarantees. And basically they've run that to its logical end course, and the team isn't even good enough to justify it anymore. So they are they barely have enough money to actually pay all their rookies. They might have to trade draft picks just to afford their other rookies.
Yeah.
They are a fascinating team in terms of what they're going to do, because while most teams are about a year away from cleaning their cap situation, the Saints feel like 2, barring like some kind of miracle. Like, if this were the NBA, they would have to trade draft picks away they would have to trade their players with draft picks just to cover the cap situation. Like, in the NBA, there's so much trickery with like, hey, we'll send you we'll send you this player, and if we give you a second round pick, will you take 75% of his cap hit for us, please?
Yeah.
But anyway, what I said is if they're going through with this draft, long-term core players, a part of how they got into this mess was they had a really good draft in 2017 that was like the core of their team for a really long time. That core is now aged and partially gone. So if you're going to talk yourself into this, you kind of have to have another draft like that, where you get at least 4-ish guys who are like regular starters for you.
That's fair. I said they need a healthy team. A lot of their problems last year happened around them being boo-booed. And, like, Derek Carr might not be the best quarterback, but he's better than Spencer Rattler, better than Jake Hayner, and just, like, I would say better than Taysom Hill, too. But if Taysom Hill's also hurt, like, you kind of lose a lot of people. Oh, they have Jack Stoll now. Did not notice that. He's technically on their tight end squad. It's yeah, no, it's a matter of like just being healthy and keeping your people alive. Like Alvin Kamara is getting up there in age, can't deny that. And you don't exactly have the most crazy depth in that room, like the running backs. Chris Olave, like they just picked up Brandon Cooks, but Rashid Shaheed got hurt last year, and that dropped him. And it's like Chris Olave, if he gets hurt, once again pre Brandon Cooks joining the team, it's like you don't really have too much going around. So it's like if you stay healthy, you have things. Also, they just need less debt.
Right. Like, so much of this is just they kind of just have to give up the ghost and accept they're really going to suck for like 1 or 2 years, and it's not going to be fun, and it's an unfair thing to do to the fan base. But, like, you can at least look at them and say, for like 10 years, we sincerely tried. We did our best to get to the Super Bowl, and that's more than a lot of franchises can say. And it's going to suck for 2 years, but, like, then we can start rebuilding. We promise. Like, we can make this work. And my big thing for, like, least needed, don't fucking try to force the QB, man. Like, again, that would be the equivalent of having a baby in a failing marriage to try and save it. Of like, guys, you don't have enough stuff to make Shador Sanders work. If they draft Jackson Dart, if anyone drafts Jackson Dart in the first round, I demand they get rid of the rookie salary cap thing. Because so much of like the obsession with quarterbacks now is you want a quarterback on a rookie contract because it saves you a lot of money. And if we somehow talk ourselves into Jackson Dart, a guy with no like A-plus physical traits, who was in a sort of spread offensive system where Lane Kiffin openly talks about, like his coach openly talks about how he's like, I don't build offenses for the NFL anymore. I build offenses to win. That man is going to show up in the NFL and completely die out there. Like, you cannot do that to your fans. Like, again, they're in a weird situation now where Derek Carr has some kind of neck injury. They haven't explained what it is. Shoulder, maybe. And, like, will most likely be out for the year. And I'm like, do not use this as an excuse to draft a quarterback high. Do not panic trade for one. Do not, like, don't do anything. If he plays, he plays. And if he doesn't, well, that just makes the rest of your job easier. Because then you get a good draft pick as you reset your cap situation.
Fair. No, that makes sense.
An exciting option, the Chicago Bears drafting number 10, a disappointing 5-12 record, but things are turning around. They fired Matt Eberflus for Ben Johnson as their head coach, spent a lot of money on their offensive line already, and
huge.
kind of, yeah, and it kind of feels like just a full-blown culture change is already underway. Like, it feels like last year was like a prequel to the Caleb Williams experience. Like, yeah, we probably should have just, like, Caleb season 0. Sorry, we should have fired the coach before he got to, we should have fired the coach a year earlier.
Yeah. And, I mean, like, look at their improvements. They picked up Almenda's Zacchaeus. So that's him, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze as 1, 2, and 3. They've acquired Joe Thuney from Kansas City for left guard, which is
yes.
In my opinion,
so he gets to play the position he actually plays.
In my opinion, yeah, huge get. Huge.
Yes.
Drew Delman as starting center, allegedly. Jonah Jackson, start right guard from the Rams, which guards from Kansas City and and the Rams aren't like. It's like, oh, we're getting a thing from you. It's like you're smiling and nodding. It's like, oh yeah, we got.
Right. They're a factory for these positions.
Yeah. Also, Bill Murray's on the team. What? The backup left guard.
I mean,
Bill
he's
Murray.
a Chicago native. He roots for the Bears, or not the Bears, the Cubs. Oh, that's funny. They're both Bear names. Huh. I didn't think about that. That's wild.
No, that's been like that for years. Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, no, they've done a decent good amount of work already, and they're
Right. They
starting
did the
to show.
vegetable getting in the off season.
Yeah. Yeah, they honestly I've made this without even really realizing how much work they did to their O-line, and I said O-line strength, which they've already done. So they're already
Right. I mean, you can argue they could upgrade at tackle, but like, I do think I always take the stance that there should be a finite amount of resources you spend at any given position group in a year, and it's like, okay, if our tackles are slightly weaker because we spent too much at guard and center, we can live with that. We'll just make the offense around that logic.
And you can also probably find a decent tackle through just people being free post draft.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And yeah, it's interesting because I said veggie positions still. I think you could continue to work on the defensive line. I'd argue, I look at your collection of skilled position players, and unless you get one of the running backs, unless you get one of the top 3 running backs between Genty, Henderson. I always get the two. There's 2 Ohio State running backs. I always get thrown off. Or Hampton. Try to prioritize one of them, but otherwise, I really do think they should prioritize defense and argue, again, the point of getting the offensive coach is they can do more with less. I do think we forget that when it's the defensive coach just keeps drafting defensive players and the offensive coach keeps drafting offensive players. How I'd argue that's why I'm going to get mad when Jacksonville inevitably drafts an offensive player.
Yep.
That's what the coach is for. But I think the lesson they learned from last season was they tried to get cocky. It's how you described it. Don't get cocky. They got cocky last year where they're like, well, now we have the great quarterback and we're going to spend money on DeAndre Swift and we're going to get 2 new wide receivers. And then someone finally goes, what about the offensive line? And then Caleb Williams gets sacked 66 times in a single season.
Yeah, and they're obviously improving at it. But yeah, no, that was my big thing of don't get cocky. Because what was it? Especially as a team, they were cocky about Caleb, and obviously you mentioned the sacks, and then even in games too, they're beaten. I think it was them against the Washington when Washington threw that insane Hail Mary, and it's the dude's taunting the crowd and stuff, and
that gets me every time.
Yeah, he's taunting the crowd, and it's yeah, we got this, and it's just no, you got cocky. It's I bet you if he focused on the situation at hand, they probably would have blocked it. Because he was the one that tipped it.
Exactly. Yeah, I so much, honestly, independent of the draft pick, I really do think just the culture change is really going to help them.
Yeah.
And someone actually had a discussion of what do Bears fans do if this doesn't work? It's you got your pick of the litter for coaches.
You move.
You still got the generational. Yeah, you just have to give up, right? You just have to give up because at that point it's oh, this is actually a cursed situation. The fucking Lions are getting having playoff runs now.
Yeah.
The Bills are having all of these cursed franchises are somehow succeeding, and you can't. Then it's just it is actually something primordial, older than the Sands themselves, because I don't know what else you can do to fix it then. But yeah, pretty straightforward one.
Yeah, you really can't. And no, it's they got the coach, probably the hottest coach on the out of the new head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
He's going in with definitely by far the most momentum, even more than the new Saint Orleans, what? New Orleans coach, even though he was the OC for the Super Bowl winning team, but he inherited a fucking dumpster fire.
Yes, and like, yeah, at some point, case in point, the fucking Chicago Cubs figured it out eventually.
Yeah.
They beat the curse. Like, that was the sports curse. And you telling me you can't get to the playoffs with all this?
Yeah, you got like if this is not their season, they gotta restructure entirely. And
Right. Then it is like they actually have to sell the team and maybe move it.
Yeah, I'm not even saying like they have to be like the best team in their division because they're still in a tough division. They just have to not. They have to try their best not to be last in their division, which I don't want to guarantee. But if it's like the next closest to them is 11 wins and they have 5. Like if it was like 2, 8, and 9 teams or something like that, they can be, or like a 8 and 9 and a 9 and 8. Sure, you can still be last in that situation, but I think their biggest sign of success is being as close to 500 as possible.
Right. You know what's sad? Like, for all the hand-wringing about like how much of a disaster of a season it was, like Caleb Williams' season with the Bears is still statistically one of the best
Rookie quarterback.
Bears. Yeah, because it's like he had 3,541 yards. For reference, like the only guy in recent memory, like in terms of Bears quarterbacks, Jay Cutler was able to get over that twice, and like he only had slightly more touchdowns. Like Rex Grossman, the two other quote-unquote good Bears quarterbacks in recent memory, because at least Rex Grossman got to a Super Bowl. Rex Grossman's closest with 3,100. And out of curiosity, I just want to look up what Mitchell Trubisky...
Good old Mitch.
Like, I have to know what his max yardage for the Chicago Bears was. The best he was able to do is 3,200. That's the funny thing. It's the game of relativity of like, if he wasn't considered like a generational prospect, if he didn't have all of this hype and pomp and circumstance, and if he wasn't the first overall pick, people would be over the moon about a 3,500-yard season and 20 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. Oh, even Roma Dunze, who's considered a disappointment, and people are like, this is why you eat your veggies before you get the flashy players. He still had 700 yards. I can't think of the last time Bears receiver had anything close to that. Like, again, it's so funny relativity on all of these things of like, you know, other than the sacks, this really wasn't that bad, all things considered. But because you're like, oh, the franchise is going to turn around overnight, it feels like a disaster, like a complete calamity.
Yeah.
And also because Jaden Daniels went to a fucking conference title game.
That also happened.
Yeah, but his franchise isn't cursed. They just had a terrible owner, and the terrible owner left, so now they're good.
Yep.
The San Francisco 49ers are a weird one at 6 and 11. They pick 11th.
I would say let's save them for next time because we're about
a
little bit of an hour in. So,
shall I send them off?
Send us home.
All right. Thank you for listening. We've gotten through the top 10, the real big dogs of the draft. And now we get into kind of the messy territory. We have some teams with high expectations last year who came up short. We have some teams who are at a crossroads where it might be the last hurrah for their coaches or their quarterbacks. And where these teams go, these picks might really end up deciding it for them.
Yeah.